just populating that as we go with links to, if we have a live stream
It's a great idea.
or links to the PowerPoint and the recordings. So I have the PowerPoints from all the previous sessions that I think I might like to put there.
Perfect.
So that there's just a little, you know,
That'd be perfect. Great spot
little.
for it. Does Dr. Coon want to log in here? So it looks like him.
I don't know.
Okay.
I think he'll probably want to use his tablet. If I had to guess. But we'll know when he gets here.
Okay. Gotcha.
That's okay with you.
Gotcha.
And if, you know,
Gotcha.
I'll have my laptop, and so if, it's kind of hard to use that because
Use that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree.
Hey,
Oh, okay.
that's so nice of you. I'll be back later.
Thank you.
You owe me $10.
I hear it, so it's screaming.
He just draws a nice picture.
Thanks, Jane.
You want me to bring it down?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So, had to turn the volume on the camera for it to pipe through. So now if we had some music, we could just pipe in some. Oh, yeah. I just had to switch to a different.
So you just mute it.
Or is it a
No,
wide pan?
I can. We hadn't planned to.
Okay,
So
so it's a
if-
wide enough pan.
So I think Jana
If someone's
Phillips.
seated here, when they speak, they just need to stand up, just
Yeah.
so you see over people, I
Yes,
guess.
yeah.
All right.
And I think Jana Phillips or whoever is speaking for
For
long range should
long
be
range.
seated here.
Here, okay,
Mhm.
all right.
So when you speak, do you address that camera?
No, our microphone is going to be right there.
Right.
You don't
And
really have to address the
they-
camera, just to address the
Okay,
people in the
they
room.
don't need to really see you,
I
they just
don't-
really need to hear you.
Mhm.
Okay.
I don't really think that we will be using the live stream.
Okay,
I think it
It's
is
a
a
backup.
backup.
gotcha.
I would ignore it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just stay
Yeah, it's, they
seated
won't
maybe,
see you.
then? You don't really need to stand up?
They won't see you, but they'll hear you.
Okay, gotcha.
And they can chat with you via the chat
Right.
pod.
From long range, we'll kind of go over the steps in the master planning process.
And then you'll be, I rearranged your slides.
And then we'll
That's
go
all right.
to you.
Reasonable to have the holdings first,
Okay. So this is the domain.
and then to have the notes,
Okay.
and then to put in
Yes.
the key.
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Makes sense.
And then some examples of each,
Uh-huh.
and the assessment on each, and then on the on-campus part, the summary list.
Made a little change here. If you look
Yeah.
at building 57,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
added
Identified.
identify
parts.
which parts are which wings
Okay.
in a not exactly the same font but really close.
Okay, and then the pie chart.
Now, this one
That-
really surprised both of us.
Me too.
Yeah.
Because.
There's a lot more green.
Well, of the square footage.
I
Yeah.
thought
Look at that.
I thought the size of the pies
Hundred
would be
and fifty
different.
Right.
bill, 60, what, 3?
150, what, 571 versus 5.
Like, hey, how many buildings was it?
Oh, yeah, 160 some odd.
63 or something?
So our on-campus and off-campus square footage is
30,000
the same.
difference.
Almost balanced.
30,000 square feet
Yeah.
difference. Just blew me away.
But very different qualities.
Oh,
I mean,
oh,
we
yeah.
we got.
Yeah. I just meant
You
the
know,
quantity. It just
yeah.
surprised me. So many buildings added up.
Missouri.
Missouri.
2010 Gray Mare,
Wow.
bred by Masterson Farms of Somerville, Tennessee.
But you hear this was.
Horseman Blake Weiss and horsewoman Jill Newcomb.
Are we gonna try to
I like the
call a
name.
meeting, or you want me to?
I
Snap,
would-
crackle, pop.
I
don't
think
like that as a
I don't
horse
think I
name.
want to ride that horse.
Snap, crackle,
Thursday
pop.
one.
I
The
like
pop-
it.
I think it's an
gets you
interesting
that
name
name.
for a
snap.
horse.
I mean-
want my horse to have a snap.
It's more of a
Yeah.
rodeo name.
Well, it
Yeah.
doesn't have anything to do with the sire of the mare.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Their
the
three-year-old
stallion's
named it.
name was R.L. Best of Sudden, and the mare was Brandy's Silver Chic.
Yeah, nothing to do.
Nothing to do with Snap.
And that's
Crackle.
not an acronym.
Just a serial name, that's it.
Now, three-year-old name.
It is a
Just
serial
serial.
name.
Yeah.
It's a
Tom, would you
gray,
do a mic test?
gray mare.
Turn on your mic and just say this is a test.
This is a test. Can you hear me?
Thanks.
Did you seriously log in?
No, I did not.
I put Mike in Mike AE.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Back to mute. Yeah,
Figured.
yeah.
Have a cough spasm.
No associates.
Okay.
Jana,
Yes.
is John, since John missed
That's what we
his
kinda-
sabbatical?
We
Kind of mentioned it, but I didn't,
Yeah,
but
he's
we
doing it
mentioned
this
it
fall.
before and went ahead and had it, but tomorrow, no.
Right now?
Yeah,
Huh?
right now.
And how long is it for?
Just the semester.
Only one
41.
Just one semester. They can't be short on AD faculty an entire year.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think of that.
Doesn't work with the class schedule. You can't be short.
What's his objective?
His objective
I'm
is to
actually
find out how
looking
to
for.
introduce the BIM into the structural
I think it
engineering
was in
program.
Oh, really? Hopefully he's visiting with Wallace and those guys.
Mayor.
Yeah, he's got a whole list of firms just all through the Salt Lake Houston.
Few faculty
Yeah,
members come
good.
on.
Places in between.
Everybody's sewer's still running all right and everything?
We use Wallace a lot.
IAB is really.
I only say that because I like
Okay.
my dad pretty.
Pretty good.
Here we go. It's recording. Mic's on. Good afternoon. Welcome. We have quite a few folks online already, but we anticipate some more will be joining us, and so we look forward to that. We think we have expanded our capacity so we can take more than 100 participants online. But if you do have trouble getting logged in, please let us know. And probably the best way to do that would be to send an email to Denise Winzenberg if you can't get on the system at all, and let Denise know if you're having trouble. Anyway, this is Tom Coot. It's good to have you on board. And we have guests here today to help us with giving us an update on our master planning process. Just a little bit of background, and then I'll introduce our guests. This began in the spring. Actually, it began before that. Dr. Randy Raper, Assistant Director of the Experiment Station, and Jana Williams, working with him, had begun working on really getting a sense for all of the challenges that we might be facing with our facilities here on campus and off campus. And really, I think working with Vice President Joe Weaver, came up with the solution of having a master planning process to help us manage that full spectrum of issues that we might have with our facilities. So I appreciate their leadership in getting us started on this path. We had approval this spring from the Board of Regents to work with a consulting group of architects. They are from Studio Architects, and with us today is Jim Hasselback and Jeff Parks. We'll hear from them in a little bit with an update on the data that they've gathered so far, and a little bit about what it means for us. We've also been assisted in this process through our long-range facility planning group here at OSU, and today Jana Phillips and Phil Thomas are here to help us with the presentation, to answer the questions that I can't or don't want to answer, and things like that. But anyway, I appreciate everyone's help here, and as usual, Dwayne Hunter and Andrew Rowe from our IT staff have helped to get us set up with the presentation here today. Jane Fullendorf is at the console in case anything goes wrong, so that she can get the ship righted and back underway. Not that that's likely to happen. The going wrong part, I mean. So anyway, so let's begin, and I'm going to change the screen here. You'll see right now that the comments function are down on the bottom. The chat pod, so to speak, is down on the bottom. I'm going to switch to a different view that makes the slides a little bit bigger, and when I do that, you'll see that the chat box is over on the right. We'll lose the participants list. Actually, Jane, if you can bring that forward. So the chat box will, there you go. There's the chat box. And so if you have questions, go ahead and enter them in that, and we'll take those on as they come along. So first, let me turn to Jana Phillips and ask her to give us kind of an overview of what this master planning process is meant to do.
Okay, thank you. What you're going to see today is a process, and we are in step 1, which is listed on your screen there as the survey and assessment of facilities. We've done this for facilities that are out west of Western and kind of between Highway 51 and Lakeview Road, and also bound on the west end by roughly Range Road. Studio will get into that a little bit further. So this is an ongoing process. We think we've covered facilities that are here, as well as those that are on the main campus. So the next step after today will be determining what scopes of improvements need to be done on the facilities that are existing, and we will get end user input. You'll hear more about that later. The result of this could be renovation of or in addition to an existing facility. It could also involve a change in location to another facility. Some consolidation may be discussed as a part of this process. Or it could also be the new building at a current location or at a new location. So there's a lot of options out there for improving the facilities that are currently existing, and also house upcoming projects and current projects. Once we have the list of the scope of improvements, we'll go to the next step, which is to prioritize the projects. And as part of that prioritization process, we will do estimating of total project costs. Once we have those two lists together and can kind of identify really what the priorities are, we will begin searching for funding sources. And once we can identify the funding sources, then we can move towards region approval and have a kickoff for a new project.
All right. Thanks, Jana. I don't see any questions in the chat box, so why don't we go ahead and proceed then. I'm going to call on Jeff Parks from Studio Architects to give us an overview of the data, the process that they've used and the data that they've gathered on our facilities in this area.
Sure, thank you, Dean Kuhn. Our process has been a really very interesting one. We've gotten to see a lot of territory that DASNR covers, and it's been a fascinating process to assess what exists today. And in assessing what exists today, that gives us a good snapshot of the condition of things as they exist, how the buildings, what the condition of the buildings are in today, and to give us a good inventory of their existing condition. The map that you see on your screen now shows the off-campus maps. Our process was divided into two major components, the off-campus parts and the on-campus facilities. This is a map of the off-campus facilities and DASNR holdings. On the map, Highway 51 is running across the bottom of the screen, and campus is on the far right-hand edge of your screen. So most of the colored area starts to the left or west of Western Avenue. Western Sangra Country Club and out to Range Road, and then from Highway 51 across McElroy and even north of Lakeview are the areas of DASNR holdings, and you see there the various entities assigned to those parcels. So within those various holdings, there are what we call nodes of activity, things that are going on. And this map shows where those nodes are located. This map also, the circles that you see are variable in size, and there are lots of different ways to define that level of activity. As architects, we have defined that as the number of built square footage that exists at each of those nodes of activity. You see agronomy station is the big dot right off of Highway 51, making its way north, bioenergy, equine, dairy, just to kind of orient you. And then the purebred center way out to the west at Highway 51 and Range Road. So again, those dots are sized based on the amount of built square footage at each of those nodes of activity where things are going on out on the properties west of Western. So as we went through our assessment process, we were looking for a number of different things, but they all revolve around the actual condition of the facility. That's not an evaluation of the program or the utilization or the great work that's going on inside. It all has to do with the condition of the actual facility. We were assessing things as we went through each building. We were looking at things like building code compliance, ADA compliance, the integrity of the building envelope, building systems like the structural system, mechanical, heat and air, electrical systems, those sorts of things. And as we looked at those, we categorized each building into one of four categories. And you see that the big circle in the center of the screen shows those four categories. Properties that were deemed excellent. These are facilities that are usually fairly new, and or they're just in excellent overall condition. Few, if any, immediate needs were discernible. As with any facility, maintenance will need to occur on those buildings, but right now they're in great shape, and of course we colored them America's brightest orange. Buildings that were in generally good condition but in need of some minor repair, we categorized as green. They're generally in good working order. There are some minor maintenance and repair items that were noted, but overall they have not impacted the viability of the building itself. Buildings that we categorized as yellow in need of major repair, those are buildings where significant cost is likely required, just relative to the overall value of the facility or building itself, to bring one or more building system up to code or a reasonable level of functionality for its overall viability. And then there are buildings that we identified as being at the end of their building life, and those are categorized as black. And these are buildings or structures that are really at a point where their long-term viability is really not reasonable compared to the overall value of it. The cost to remedy whatever issue exists probably far outweighs the overall value of the facility. So, a lot of words, but just to give you some examples of what that might mean. So an excellent building, an orange building, might be the Ridge Road South greenhouse. It's in great shape, generally speaking. Not that, with any building there are always pluses and minuses, but overall it's in great shape. It's functioning very well, one of the hallmarks of the program. A building that might be in need of minor repair is the Touchsec Arena. Generally in good shape. There are some minor maintenance issues and things like that need to be addressed, but it's still functioning very well. A building in need of major repair might be the 4-H Youth Development Building here on campus. There are some major systems issues, ADA access issues. Some substantial money will need to be spent if it is to be brought into modern, usable condition. But it's a very stout building. There's a lot of good solid structure there. A building that might be at the end of its building life would be either of the freestall barns out of the dairy. It really has reached the end of its viability. There's not a lot there to really save for from a structural standpoint to move forward. So, in taking those evaluations and looking at each of the facilities, we went and toured almost each and every building. It's over 163, I think. So then if you look at each node and break that down into the oranges and the greens and the yellows and the blacks, you can see here on campus how the square footage breaks down for each node, and where some of the better groupings and where some of the facilities are that really might need more attention from a building standpoint. You can see them on the map there.
I guess it's good that we're building a new freestyle barn at the dairy.
That is an excellent move forward. Yeah, highly commended.
Right.
And I would point out that square footage is not yet shown on this map because it doesn't yet exist.
The new space.
The new space
Right.
does not exist. The old space does still exist, and that is quantified there in the wedge of black.
And the same is true of the equine center, is that right?
That is correct.
It's not on here because we haven't taken occupancy.
It's not actually online yet.
Right.
It's on the way, but not online yet.
Good. I guess I'll point out as well that the equine center here, the Tadashek Arena is included in that space.
That is correct.
Calculation, so that
Yes.
you put those two together.
Yes.
Not surprising, the swine facility in excellent shape, a relatively new building. And then we have, I believe over here, the orange is the Ridge.
That's the Ridge Road South.
Ridge Road greenhouses.
Greenhouse,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
yes.
And in contrast to the large black area here is the poultry barn that we use up on the north side of campus.
Right. That really has kind of reached the end of its viability as structures. So it's an interesting snapshot to see sort of where each node stands. Again, not a comment or criticism of the great work that goes on at each and every one of those nodes, just the state of the actual facilities themselves. And here you see, now we've zoomed in on campus. This is a new map, but also shows the existing conditions. To orient you, Boone Pickens Stadium on the far right-hand side of the screen is probably the most readily visible element. Hall of Fame running east and west just north of that. We are currently in Ag Hall, right there on your screen. And then headed out Farm Road, you can see Cyril and the teaching greenhouses. So here on campus, both Cyril and the teaching greenhouses were identified as buildings that are at the end of their building life. They've kind of served the university well, but not really, to put more money in them at this point really isn't a viable option. You can see that the Biosystems Lab building, we've actually qualified that as two different colors. The newer portion, in the high bay portion in the center is classified as green, and then the lower portions around the edges are yellow. You can see the 4-H building classified as yellow. Immediately south of that is Animal Science, classified as green. FAPSI is a great newer facility, and generally in excellent orange condition. Ag Hall, to the south of that, we have classified both as yellow and black. The black portions being the lab wings, the north and south wings of the building, are classified as black. And the yellow portion on the east is the taller portion, and we classify that as yellow. Proceeding on the other side of Monroe, Ag North is classified as green. It's in good condition, even though an older metal building facility. And then the Noble Research Center, those spaces, while there are some very ready needs within that facility, it's generally in good condition.
Tom, you have a question.
The question is the Nutrition Physiology Center included in the Purebred Beef Center? And the answer is yes. So out here in the southwest corner, the Purebred Beef does include the Nutrition Physiology building.
That's correct.
As well as the annex to that. And then the green, I think, is probably the sale barn itself.
Yes.
Which has gone through some major improvements over the last couple of years.
That is correct.
So, yep. Thanks, Sarah. I think Sarah was hoping you'd rate that black. I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing.
There are lots of reasons to.
But yellow catches our attention too.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Okay.
So here you see lists of buildings. These are the lists of yellow and black buildings located off campus. We classified 31 buildings off campus that are in need of major repair and 14 that are at the end of their building life. And you see them there, and you can feel free to review them in further detail per Dean Kuhn's direction.
Yeah, we'll be giving you a URL where you could go and look in detail at these maps and the lists of buildings and so on. So don't worry about writing all of this down or taking a screenshot. God bless you if you can read those. So these are the ones that are off campus, and then the next slide is the ones that are on campus.
That's correct. Of course.
And these are just the ones in need of major repair or at the end of building life.
That's right. And so on campus, there are far fewer buildings in total on campus, but 2.5 of them, the half being about half of Ag Hall, are classified in need of major repair, and another 2.5, again, the other half being the lab wing, the north and south wings of Ag Hall, as at the end of their building life. So to kind of quantify that into a couple of big pieces of information, these two pie charts look at the off-campus facilities on the left and on-campus facilities on the right. Interestingly enough, there's almost the exact same amount of square footage off-campus west of Western as there is on campus. But you can see that overall, about a third of the buildings that are located off campus are classified in need of either major repair or at the end of building life. On the plus side, there are 14% of the square footage off campus is excellent. Here on campus, nearly half of the square footage that DASNR occupies on campus is in need of either major repair or has reached the end of its the end of its building life as well. So that gives us some great kind of clarification of where things stand. There are obviously, as I mentioned, some great things going on in the facilities. There are also some really great facilities. There are also some pretty obvious needs from a building standpoint, and I'm sure that as the process moves forward, we will be identifying more needs from a program standpoint that we'll be anxious to work on with you as we move forward.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jeff. I really appreciate the work of Jeff and Jim and their firm in helping us pull this data together. And again, I want to recognize Jana Williams and Randy Raper for their efforts to make information available for them to work with. Bob Klein has helped with that as well. And so it's a big task. 163 structures. I'm not sure all of them deserve to be called a building, but 163 structures surveyed. 11 of those are in the on-campus part, so 152 are at the off-campus. And just to be clear, this is just here in Stillwater. We're not talking about the other outlying stations at all. So that's another project. But first this one. So as we think about this, we've got some heady work ahead of us, I think, in how we address nearly half of our on-campus and a third of our off-campus facilities, the square footage anyway, being in that state of either in need of major repair or at end of building life. And so it's tempting to simply say, well, let's just replace each one of them and then we'll be in great shape. And of course, the reality is we don't have the resources for that, but perhaps even more important than that, those buildings were built at a time for certain uses that, with technology that really aren't necessarily relevant today. And so I think as we look ahead, it's going to be helpful for us to gather insights from all of those who are participating and those who can't participate in today's forum. Faculty, staff, students, all have insights, I think, that are going to be really helpful for us as we think about not only prioritizing, but also a way of approaching this big task. So I think one of the things that struck me is I think it will serve us well to carry as one of our themes a focus on consolidation. 163 structures probably is not optimal for managing. If you think about some of the concerns we have with security or safety, some of the issues related to technology, electrical services, and so on, we're probably better off going forward to think of how we can consolidate into fewer structures and have those structures meet our needs, but to do it with fewer footprints, whether they're bigger or smaller, to have fewer footprints, fewer sets of systems to deal with. I think another, along that line, and in the spirit of efficiency that our budgets really force us into, is a need to think about collaboration. I'll never forget, early in my career, I interviewed for a job at a small college in Indiana, and it was a dream job because every professor had his or her own office, their own little research laboratory, their own teaching laboratory, and their own classroom. They had a nice endowment at that college. They also didn't need me. At least that was their conclusion. But it really struck me. I thought this is a dream to have my own domain that I can use as I see fit. I think those days are gone, and I'm not sure they were ever there at most universities and colleges. But so I think the point is, if we have certain functions that need certain kinds of space, especially very specialized space, we need to think about how we can use that fully and efficiently. The problem with everyone having their own research lab for doing whatever it is they want is that there's time when that lab isn't being used. And it may be that we're duplicating investments in equipment or in infrastructure support. If you need snorkel hoods or something like that, that we've got to do that in every lab, whereas we might be able to consolidate and focus more in having specialized lab space for multiple users. So I think that those are a couple of things for us to think about as we go forward. Jim just pointed out to me, thanks Jim, I really needed this, we got about 500,000 square feet of facility space that's in need of major repair or worse. That's right. I guess I don't think that's a surprise, but it's still kind of a shocking number, and I think it's going to be a shocking number when the regents get this report, that we have that much that is in need of major repair or replacement. So we're not canvassing people today. We're not seeking, in a formal way, input from people. We will be doing that as part of the master planning process. But I'm just trying to set us up in terms of how we think about the questions that we face now in deciding what it is we need to build, what it is we need to repair, and how we can do that efficiently so that we can attract the kind of funding it's going to take to get this done. You can take 500,000 square feet, simply replacing that at today's rates for $500 per square foot would be a fairly high price tag that we might expect to have to pay. It's not out of the question, though. We might be facing something in that order. $500 per square foot times 500,000 square feet. That's a lot of money, and we're probably not necessarily going to get all that money. So we've got to really think about being as efficient as we can. They're laughing at my math here. It's called Dean math. You use as many zeros as you can so you can simplify the multiplication. So with those themes, consolidation, collaboration, in addition, I think we need to look a little more carefully. So for example, with Sarah's question about the Nutrition Physiology Center, what are the functions in each of these facilities that are rated as yellow or black? What are the functions in those that we really need to make sure we support? So as we look forward to either major repairs or replacements of those facilities, we've got to make sure that we're addressing the functions that we need to be able to support in those facilities. What are the other what other functions might be compatible with that? Perhaps folks using mass specs or using PCR machines or something like that, perhaps banks of those in common use space may make sense and might be compatible, provided we've got enough electrical current going into the room. But some of the other functions that we might think about, if we're concerned about housing live animals, how diverse should our facilities be in terms of the kinds of animals that we can support in those? What are some of the key features that we need to maintain? Maybe there's something about that poultry building that's rated as black up north that we need to make sure we don't lose that capacity, that some aspect of it that it supports. Maybe it's in the air handling system, maybe it's in waste management and so on. And then finally, think about locations. Those dots are scattered over about 4 or 5 square miles of land surface with a lot of good productive land in between them. Does it serve us well to have our resources scattered as much as they are? For security purposes, we may need to look at consolidating some of these into fewer locations. Do we want them to be close to campus, or do we prefer to have them a little bit farther from campus? If close to campus, which needs come first in terms of proximity to campus? So I think as we look at this, we also need to be looking at locations that we should be considering. Finally, there's a tendency to claim ownership and assume ownership, and I guess it just bears mentioning that we think we control about 4 or 5 square miles of land surface. The truth is the regions do. And so fortunately right now we have been given the responsibility of using and managing those spaces, but we also have to make sure that we're using them well because they could be used for other purposes. And so I think, not to be too defensive, but I think it's important for us to make sure that we're making the best use of the space that we have been given. So it's time for questions. I'm going to switch back to the other view here, so there's a little more room. You can see your comments there in the bottom. If you have questions or comments about what you've heard so far, we welcome those. We can talk a bit more, perhaps, about how we would go about gathering input from folks along these lines, addressing the questions, especially about those yellow and black buildings. And the functions they serve, and what kind of functions we're going to need in those going forward. So I'll go ahead and ask a question. So what would be some of the ways that we might gather information from people about these buildings in terms of the kinds of uses that we might want to make sure that we take care of going forward?
So one way that we have done that with other similar processes is a series of what we call charrettes, or small group meetings, where we actually gather up with people that use the facilities, and we talk about specifically what their needs are, what the things that are lacking in the existing facilities, and what help them dream a little bit about what future opportunities are, what other peers at other institutions might have access to or have seen in other places, and what might function well in this group. But at any rate, sort of a series of small group sessions with people that use individual facilities or at different nodes of activity would be one way to step forward with that.
So I guess the benefit of that is that those who are participating have an opportunity to hear others and, in a way, react to what they're hearing from others.
Sure, exactly, right.
Right, and we may hear some common themes that might allow us to reach some of the goals that you were expressing earlier, such as consolidation.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a major goal of this would be to not create 163,
Mm-hmm.
maintain that number. That's more toilets, restrooms, heat and air, anything we can do to consolidate square footage. And I'm not doing it, I'm not saying that just to, save square footage, but it just being a good steward of the monies that the DASNR's giving, I think is part of the goal also. And we might be able to catch some common themes with different groups that actually could benefit from co-location, because there may be things going on that they can feed off of each other that actually enhance their individual processes or projects being co-located than if they were separate and isolated. That's not to say everything's like that, but we may
You bet.
hopefully find some opportunities to do that.
Okay.
You have a
Great.
question?
Laura, can you tell us which building is the black building at the OBG horticulture area? Dr. Raper, you want to handle that?
Yeah, there are 3 buildings actually categorized like that. It's building 688, which is called the Horticultural Storage Building, 692, which is called the Nursery Barn, and 696, which is the Horticultural and Forestry Storage Area. 3 separate buildings.
As you can clearly see on the screen.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So clicking to it didn't necessarily help. One thing I will say is, again, these documents are going to be available online. We'll provide that URL when we get to the end of the presentation, so you can go and explore those a bit more.
I know it's been said, but it's probably important to emphasize just one more time that these representations are of the building and facility only, not the uses
Not the
within the
function.
building.
Yeah, yeah. That's a really important point.
Yes.
If you're in a yellow building, it's not that we don't think your work is important.
That's correct.
It's that we think your
Well,
work
there's
needs
some
a better
outstanding
space.
stuff going
Yeah.
on in
Yeah.
black buildings that they just happen to be in an old building, but they're doing great work.
So Phil and Jana, this might be for you. How does this plan integrate in with the university's master plan? And what is the status of that master plan?
I can answer that. The status of the current master plan is an ongoing process. Certainly, the way that DASNR fits into that is an integral part of this ongoing master plan. So once we have the information as to what the needs are and some priorities of where what really needs to happen to make the improvements that are needed, we can go back and do an overlay of what works best for DASNR and what works best for the campus as a whole. So it's an ongoing process of give and take, and one cannot be done in a vacuum from the other. So they'll be done kind of building up process one to the other.
Well, go ahead, Phil.
I think one thing to mention is that for the OSU master plan, the key areas that are going to be of impact from DASNR are those that are on campus versus those that are off campus.
Okay.
I think your master planning efforts that you've gone through are going to help you as DASNR realize, do you have things on campus that need to be in the off-campus scenario and vice versa? And as those are recognized, we can blend those into the current master plan work that we're doing. And just to emphasize Jana's point, any master plan is a living document. It is not a one and done.
Yeah.
It is an evaluation, and every time something happens, it's reevaluated.
Well, and if you go back to the 2006 version of the master plan, which is probably the last complete
Published.
master plan, the ag quad is identified as the area north of Farm Road, south of Hall of Fame, and from Monroe over to Cleveland. That large block is identified as the ag quad. That was a concept. It's probably not. It's not going to achieve reality. We may be able to move into some of that space, but we may also look at locating new buildings elsewhere as well. So,
Well, I
as
think-
Phil said, some of that may need to go off campus, some on.
Well, and to your point, just to the idea of it's a living document, when the 2006 document was done, the electrical substation that sits at Hall of Fame and whatever.
Washington?
No.
No,
The one that goes past the
The
health.
backside of Animal
Lincoln.
Science.
Lincoln.
Lincoln.
At Lincoln. That's now in the process of being relocated west of Western because of the need and the approval from the Board of Regents to replace the physical plant, the central plant.
Mhm.
It's being replaced, and as a course of action, that triggered a whole series of things, and so that substation is now going off campus. Well, at the time when the 2006 was done, master plan, that was not gonna move. It couldn't move. That's primary source of power to the campus.
Now it has to.
Now it has to, and so there's gonna be elements of that area. So,
So,
to Jana's point, as we start to look at all of this and evaluate ag/DASNR on campus, there are a whole lot of things that we need to integrate into our current master plan.
well, no one has jumped on that comment yet, but I will. We're at west of Western.
It's over by the water treatment plant
Okay,
in that general area.
okay.
We know about it.
Virginia.
They've already moved fences on
Yeah.
animal science in the sheep farm.
Yeah, okay, all right.
And
Went there.
we are working with Randy on sections of land that we have to cross for distribution lines.
Okay.
So all of that's being addressed. We didn't do it without asking, Dean.
I just wanted you to answer, I didn't want to answer it myself.
Randy said it was okay.
Yeah. There goes the bus.
I've been under that one before.
All right, great. Other thoughts or questions, Randy or Jana? Do you have any thoughts you want to touch on?
I think one point that should be made is that I know some faculty and some people are going to be concerned about working inside a black or a yellow building. And I think it should be noted that we in Ag Hall are inside a black and a yellow building. So there's a lot of life that still goes on in those buildings.
Right.
It's just a way for us to kind of categorize where we think the future lies, and particularly some of these smaller structures out west of Western. There's still a lot of things that can go in those buildings, but it's just a tool that we can use to kind of help us analyze what the future of that structure is, and should we make an investment in that structure, or perhaps should we not?
That's a good point.
Yep.
And it's not just typically one thing that puts it into a yellow or black. There's
Yeah.
a series of things that are gonna have to be addressed for that facility to be safe and functional moving forward. So I think Jeff touched on all those up front, but if you're not familiar with those types of things, it may have been, I mean, you did a good job.
Right,
but-
no, it's absolutely, it's a collective sort of set of information that helps us to know how a building fits or feels or doesn't. And, I would also say, absolutely, great work goes on inside yellow and black buildings. That's not reason to cause alarm to anyone by any means. That's a whole other set of processes for really bad buildings, but that helps us to know what the overall condition of a facility is in moving forward, and where money should or should not be spent.
Another aspect of that is that we're not hitting the pause button. We have quite a few projects already underway.
Right.
The equine facility course is almost finished. The dairy facility, we haven't broken ground yet, but we're moving forward on that. We've been in planning stages for the nutrition physiology building, and we're going to continue to plan as we go through this process. Dr. Anella has developed some great ideas for some improvements out at the Botanic Garden. Again, accessibility for the public is kind of the theme of that, and that's something that we need to do. So it's not as if we're going to stand still while we finish this process. Those projects are ongoing. I think they'll be consistent with what we're going to be coming up with in the master plan. So I guess that in closing, then I guess I would say ultimately, if you go back to Jana's comments at the beginning, we're going to have a plan with some cost estimates, a little finer tuned than my 500 times 500,000.
Not much, but a little.
No, I'll bet we're pretty close. But anyway, those will go to the regions for their review and approval. And so, I guess the benefit of that is having the regents weigh in on this and give us approval to move forward, or perhaps to give us feedback and go back to the drawing board. I think that's an endorsement that we need to have. Well, obviously for governance purposes, but also just to have their support for addressing some of the challenges that we're facing. So I really appreciate the help of our long-range facility planning folks here at OSU and our colleagues at Studio Architects for all the work that's gone into this and for all the work that's yet to come. So thank you, everyone, and we'll follow up with, before we stop, I'm going to switch over to one more view. I should have done this a while ago. So on the right side now, you can see the click on that. That's a hot link. So you can click on that and your computer will take you to the website where you can find the documents. I believe there are 2 documents that you can download and view for closer scrutiny. So we'll leave that up. I'm going to go ahead and close off the recording and the mic now, but we'll keep this screen live so you can go and click on that later if you're driving the car. We don't want you to try to click on something. What are you doing anyway? But anyway, so
It's against
thanks.
the law now.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, everyone, and have a good afternoon. There.
We had 99.